No.
Sure, I'll have one too.
I know, but please.
Please. Thank you.
Well, welcome.
Oh, wait, mine's on there. That's the.
You know what it is?
No.
Say okay.
Yeah, wait a minute, I've got to get one little bit now. Is that this? Okay. I get them all confused. I need my little cheat sheet. My father had a notebook with all of his passwords in there. He's very good, yeah.
I got it on my phone, but today my phone broke.
Same kind of with your
Oh,
Oh, wait.
Now, how will you know any of their passwords, right? Did you say them anyway?
Well,
Yep.
just suck them out
My
of the
father
air.
has a notebook, and he rips it up, he said, okay, so go on to this, and this is. 91 years old, and I am. He said it. Okay. We have 1 minute, well, 2 minutes, depends on what clock you look at.
45 seconds.
Okay, I'm going to call the October 10th Town Council meeting to order. We stand to pledge the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No public comment, thank you. Consent agenda.
Make a motion, we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to presentations. Planning. Oh, you moved.
I did. Thought it was better.
In front and center.
too hot and left.
Yes.
No.
Okay.
So we've had
Bless
a busy couple months in planning. Just to let you know about some of the things that have happened. There was a 3-lot subdivision. The planning board did the preliminary and final review, and it has been signed and recorded. That is the one on Central Pike and Paris Only Hopkins Road. A preliminary plan was approved for a 5-lot subdivision on Cucumber Hill Road and Harrington Road. That still needs to go to final review, which will come back to the planning board. Let's see, we've been working on the draft solar ordinance, which is scheduled for a hearing on October 24th. We're going to be talking about it at the planning board next week, and I feel like we've come close to being finished. I don't know if that'll be the final, maybe another time, but we're getting very close
We'd like lots of info. We can have, like, if we have some questions for the council.
for that meeting.
Yeah.
What meeting are you talking about? The planning board meeting or the October 24th meeting?
We have it on for, it's the public hearing was continued for the town
Right.
council to October 24th. So hopefully we can get, at the next planning board meeting, get at least somewhat of a working draft or some questions we may want to pose to the council to.
Okay. All right,
Which is
October 24th.
The next your meeting, yeah.
our
And
meeting.
Our meeting is
Wednesday.
next week, next Wednesday.
Which is the
16th.
17th, 16th.
We've also did administrative subdivision for Blackmore and Figley. That took a little while, and to let you know that Hartford 101, the solar project, that the person appealing and the developer have come to an agreement. So they've signed a memorandum of agreement.
Awesome.
Yes, so
Awesome.
everything is set. They have submitted their final plans, so I'm still looking over that. And, so I wanted to let you know that that was done. And we're just going forward, and I'll talk to you about the grant when it
Yes,
comes
you're
to
going to
that.
stay for that portion.
Yep.
Thank you. Finance. Hi.
Hi.
How are you? So, we're preparing for the audit for the new year, we're spending a lot of time with that. We are helping out in, the assessor's office, we're trying to actually gather information. I spoke to Joanna today to make sure that, deadline sensitive items are being heard and, taken care of. We have some concerns with that, but I'm gonna work with Joanna to make sure we don't miss any deadlines. Also, what I've done is I met with Sue Boucher, the assistant to the assessor, and I met with Karen in our office, who has some experience in assessing properties from her previous employment. And we have been establishing a timeline for her to actually go out. We have a 3 or 4 page list of inspections that need to be done from the last couple of years, basically, that we need to make sure that the newest data is in the system by December 31st so that we can tax it next year. So what she's doing is earmarking a certain period of time to go out, and we're gonna try to allocate a day or 2 for her to work on this until we get some of this caught up, because we're concerned that it's gonna be too much work for anybody to do. We're gonna get too far behind. Eventually, we're gonna have to look into. Go
I
ahead.
just want to ask a question when you're done.
Eventually gonna look into having to get some sort of help if this continues, either in my office, so Karen and Sue can continue, or in the assessor's office, but that's a little bit, Joanna and I were actually talking about, that's a little bit more difficult to find. So we're gonna see how it goes, but in the meantime, the concern was that it was becoming overwhelming, the amount of work that wasn't getting done, so we wanna make sure we start chipping away at it. That leads me to the next.
Can I just interrupt then?
Yeah.
Because this is where my question is. I'm sure Karen is very efficient and capable, but does she need a certain certification to go out and do these inspections?
Being a
With-
certified assessor is not a requirement.
Okay,
But
well,
it's-
why is it more difficult to find someone to work in the assessor's office where it seems that we need that versus in the treasurer's department?
Because it's something that we're gonna just fill in, so you're looking at a temp, and you're also looking at somebody with a specific certification or like experience, which she does have from her previous job. She actually was certified in Connecticut.
Okay,
So
so she
she's
doesn't
actually
need to have a
looking
certain
into-
certification to go out and assess this
No,
property?
and actually what we're doing is keeping a log of everything she's changing, so that when Patty does return, there's a whole file that she can go in and review.
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
so we're making sure.
I just want to make sure that we're not
We're
shooting
making,
ourselves in the foot.
no, we're making sure that all this information is put into the system. We have a lot of property that's just recently been built, and decks and all this property that's not sketched. She knows how to sketch, she knows how to value it. So basically, the system is assessing.
Mhm.
It's a program. She's putting the information into the program, and then we have files of all of this information that will then later be reviewed and signed off on by our assessor when she returns. So, Nancy and I were all trying to work together to make sure that some of this work gets done. We'll have to talk about that going forward as this progresses. So that's a big part of it. Then I wanted to bring up, the car issue. I did bring this up with Bob. The 2 days that so far she's been earmarked to go out, both days she's returned because the cars have broken down. 2 different cars, different reasons, not major problems, but problems that one day the brakes weren't functioning properly and the car was smoking at the tire because it was overheating, but they didn't know that. And then they brought it back to the garage, and then yesterday in the rain, they were stuck on the side of the road because it wouldn't start after the second inspection. So the car had to be towed, the DPW director went and picked them up. The problem with our vehicles is that they're too old. So what's happening is we get rid of them from the police station, then we keep them for years. So What I'm suggesting is, A, that we either start looking into allocating some funds this year, trying to find that, either selling the cars that we do have and using that money to purchase a functioning, reliable vehicle. I mean, we're talking twice, both times she's gone out, both times she's returned.
Kind of a fluke though, I mean.
It's a fluke, but even our DPW director has
Right.
stated that both cars are extremely old, that they're gonna have problems, and to send people out.
Okay, well, I spoke to Bob about it too, because Sue called me regarding the fact that the ladies were out. So I wanted to know what broke down, what the
Right.
problem was. I guess last week it was a calibrator,
A
Yeah.
caliber, the brakes were failing, they
Brake
froze.
caliper.
brake caliber, which at Napa, it was a
I understand.
bad thing and Napa's taking care of that. Yesterday's was, it's an old car
Mhm.
and we need to, the starter went and we need to look at that. So that brings, and I don't know if I can discuss it now, is it all right to discuss it with the auto, the policy? Because that.
Well, I'm just actually saying that we have to start thinking about replacing those vehicles so that we have one or two,
Mhm.
because Rhett's been stuck before, Carol has been replacing air in her tire every time she goes out to do it because the rim's bent. So I spoke to Bob and he agrees that we have to, A, plan for this on the capital, so you'll see it on the capital plan if we can make it through this year with these vehicles, and if not, we're gonna be looking to spend some money out from contingency and the sale of some property, like the assets that we're selling, to buy a more viable functioning car. Because when you spend your week reallocating someone's time for them to go out and do a certain number, and they return both times because of a non-functioning vehicle, and honestly, nobody wants to be stuck. I mean, the DPW guys, no offense to them, if they break down in one of our town cars, they call another guy on the radio, they come, they tow it, that's all part of their job. This is not really necessarily that type of the job, so be prepared that in the capital plan next year,
Mhm.
we're gonna most likely be trying to earmark some money to buy a good used car.
What
Or-
years are those vehicles?
The car that, the Caliber was the captain's old car, and he's gonna be looking to replace the car that he replaced it with in about a year.
The black one?
Yeah, the little one.
Mhm.
And the older one, the SUV,
Yeah.
was the chief's, Zeal's, old car, and he's looking to replace his other one in about a year as well. So they're looking to replace their older ones. They both have, I think,
The chief's looking to replace his.
in about a year or two, like that's on his capital, we'll talk about that a different day, but, the smaller car has about 175,000 miles on it.
Mhm.
And I mean, this is gonna happen
Yeah.
when the cars are old, and we're just not, in all the capital replacement, it's never a consideration. But yet we have these people out there riding, and it's just, so that happened this week. Now, did you want to talk about this?
No. One second, I thought you might raise your hand. No, I talked to Bob about what happened and what were the concerns with the vehicles. And he did say putting something on the capital for next year would be a good idea.
And hopefully this path doesn't continue, like they start spending, like the
And-
time knowing that we're using them.
When Sue called me yesterday in regards to the ladies being broke down, she talked about the fact that our personal vehicle policy. And I looked back at what notes I had, and somebody on the council can correct me. I seem to recall that we said they could use their personal vehicle, they just had to provide us with a license, and that they had to have a copy of the letter and initial that they knew that these are the possibilities, that their insurance company may not. So I didn't think that we ever said they could not use their vehicle. We just said that we need them to,
And we needed proof of their insurance.
right, proof of their insurance.
I don't think some people are comfortable with that for some reason, but that's neither here nor there.
And who's responsible to get that information? Who does that?
According to that, me.
According to the town finance director.
I mean, the only problem with this that I see, well, there's problems, the problem with that is everybody's license expires at a different time.
Mhm.
So I have copies of everybody's license, it's part of their, I-9 information, really, their identification.
But it was the
But upon their
The insurance.
expiration, I don't recertify that license is active ever.
And I wouldn't think you would.
And the insurance, my policy is a 6-month policy, and every 6 months, so
My
I'd have
Yeah,
to do
it
that.
was-
I'd have to
they
do
were
it every 6 months.
recommending-
Well, when you start having
What amount?
teenagers
They
again,
were recommending a certain amount,
it's
but
6 months, they don't trust you for more than 6 months.
I've been a year.
Yeah, but the insurance, the trust was requiring a certain amount.
Right.
but we didn't say they had to.
They were
have-
recommending
They
not
recommended,
requiring.
we did not
It's
say
a
that.
recommendation.
You weren't requiring.
We need to show our insurance.
We didn't say
I
that.
think it might
That's-
be fair that you
I mean,
need to show your license.
It's all a gamble.
Right. I think the important thing is that they have a copy of the letter so that they realize.
That's the easy part, everybody's all like, and the question is, if they do take the wrong cars for this reason, like, are we going to reimburse mileage for this?
Right, and that's something Sue and I had talked about.
So
those are the-
That reimbursing mileage is.
But-
So it kicked in.
She didn't have a
I
problem
know.
driving the car, she just didn't want, you know,
Right.
we need to look into this.
Howard Shipping 49 manager, that black car is a piece of junk. We had to use stop signs to plug the holes so it passed inspection. The motor mounts are
All right,
almost
all right.
rotted very well, so. It needs to be
It passed
replaced.
inspection.
I know what.
It passed inspection, that's not our
It
problem.
passed inspection.
All right.
Just think of
That's
that.
not our problem.
I don't want to
It
say that we
passed
did something weird with it.
inspection.
No, we didn't do anything illegal. But it just, we're spending a lot of money for nothing. Coventry Police, they used to go through like, the rental car companies, they get rid of them every 3 years, and they used to use that for the detective agent, you know, like Tauruses and stuff like that, and they were in really good shape. So
Okay.
something to think about.
There's all kinds of options, and that's what I'm just saying, we need to really start looking at them because,
Is that where my stop sign went?
it is becoming an issue. We had a town, the deputy town clerk went to the state, I think I told it the last time,
Yeah.
in the rainstorm,
In the
and the
wind.
windshield wiper flew off
Yeah.
in the middle of the road, so
Right.
she had to like pull over till it stopped raining.
Mm.
And she said she didn't even wanna look to see if it hit anybody, but, you know, it's just not
Yeah.
ideal, we need to get better cars, and, for that reason, but it
So-
came up with the whole traveling. The next thing I wanted to talk about is, communication, I'm trying to go to, I went to the engineering board meeting, the
Oh, yes,
last
I heard
one,
that.
and I'm going to try to go to as many as I can, simply because I hear so many things that I just think that it's better if I'm there, if they have a question, if there's a concern about anything, that I'm there and available for somebody to ask me a question, and that way I also hear things straight on instead of other people repeating it. It's just easier, and I think it's, straight line communication is always best. And I liked hearing that, the presentation of the report. I know you all have that report in your packet in Sugar Sync. I just wanted to, say that when you read the financial part of it, nobody ever discussed that with me. And it does, the 2018 budget is accurate, but if you really look at it and compare it, it's not really comparing apples to apples, so I just want you to keep that in mind, and if you have any questions when we go over it. They did a really good job on the report, I just wanna say that. When they're referring to the money and they're saying that this is what the town gives them, keep in mind when they're comparing it to Exeter, they're comparing them to Exeter's budget for the ambulance corps, say. So the ambulance corps' budget, our ambulance corps' budget isn't what we give them, it's what we give them plus the billings plus other things. So in order to compare apples to apples, you kind of have to look at the budget to the budget, not the appropriation we give them to their total budget, which is what happened. And also, when you look at our total appreciation, they used a 2018 budget. And although that is accurate, it's not really accurate to what we're doing, as to what we're doing now. For that particular year, we didn't give capital, there was a couple of years in there that there was a capital
That's the one thing I noticed when I read it.
capital dispute kind of, where we weren't really funding them, and that's really not true. The year after that, we funded them, I think, $70,000 for a match and a grant, plus an additional $10,000 for the, was it Jaws of
Jaws of
Life?
Life.
And then this year, we're funding them $135,000. So when you look at the whole thing, our appropriation is what we give them for operations, plus it's the ambulance corps stipends, plus it's the capital, plus you have to look into what else they've budgeted, because that's not their whole budget, that's just what we give them, and they looked at Exeter's budget, because they're not funded the way we are, they have their own individual budgets. So, I think it's a great point to start though, for a conversation, and then once you take into all those pieces, then you can really see the differences between the communities, and then we can elaborate from there. But I just wanted to point that out, because I did read the report. The other thing, as far as, better communication, what I'm trying to get is, like, I've been hearing things, from different people, they tell me, or just in passing, Bob had mentioned, we had some issues with the property and the town hall property, like on that property, the buildings itself, who owns what. And, we have resolved some of that, but then I heard that there's some question now whether or not we own the barns on the other side of the canopies for the animal. And, the current opinion is that we don't, but from a financial standpoint, I need you all to know that I do actually report that as owned by the town for the audit. So if it's not true, so I'm trying to do some research with that to see who owns what property on that area, not because I care about who uses it, because honestly, I think that's really up to you, who uses it, and how you use it, or whatever. But I do think that it's important that we have it accurate, because currently, in our records, at the town, in the town clerk's office, in the assessor's program, we show ownership of all of that
If
I
it's
property.
think the town does.
If it's on
There's-
town land, don't we own it?
Well,
No,
not,
not necessarily.
it
Do
depends
they
if there's
pay
a
taxes, or do
deed
they
or.
pay upkeep for it? We
They
pay
take
upkeep.
care of all the upkeep, they do. They take
Well,
care of all the.
I couldn't find any deed or any, or record that showed that we didn't own it, but currently in our system, it does show that we own it. So I am trying to look into some,
Do we insure it?
it's on our list of insurance.
Yeah. So should we?
And because I provide them that list of insurance, and it's always
I'm
been
not
on the
gonna
list.
discuss it tonight.
I mean, I'm just talking about this with things that I'm doing and trying to communicate, so if anybody has actual real information on this.
The only information I have is what I included in the packet,
Or I
which
could
is the supper
see,
shed.
oh, right, I didn't even see that, because I had already known that, so I knew that we settled on the supper shed, now I'm trying to look into the other pieces of property, so if anybody has information, because I provided this information to the auditor and to our insurance company, and I want it to be accurate.
The town does not, I only know because when my kids were in 4-H maintained those buildings.
But I don't know if that has
Yeah.
anything to do with ownership or use, whoever, everybody can use it if you say they can, I just wanna know who physically, like legally owns that property, so I
I
report
think
it
it's all
correctly.
on town property, so it would make sense to me that we.
Well, I was recently told by 2 people now that we don't, so I'm just trying to get that information, if anybody has any
Another-
knowledge
The
or,
Could it
Home Day
possi-
Committee built the supper shed,
And they built the barns.
and they paid for it. They
But we
built
own
it
it.
and
They-
paid for it, but it's
They,
on our
they
property,
deeded it to
so-
us,
the
that
supper shed, yes, I
the
knew
supper
that
shed.
one.
But the other one, so my thinking is,
Those things have been there for years.
I know, and I've reported it, but now 2 people have
Right,
recently
right.
told me that we don't own it.
so if, I'm wondering if we leased the land under it to them.
I can't find
I doubt
any,
it.
I can't find
I doubt
any
it.
recorded lease that says that,
But there's a deed for one
for one.
building and not a deed for another.
Right, which, so that makes me,
Well,
Those were
here's
built
my
by the
take on it,
fair
if my neighbor, if
committee,
my
the
parents
old
build
ones.
something on my property, I own it, it's my property.
That's
Unless
correct.
there's something that he
is
says that,
correct.
hey, I'm
Said.
building this on your, and there's something recorded.
That is correct.
And long before me, this has been recorded in the system that we own it. So I'm just trying to clear all this stuff up, because once and for all, I mean, Tammy was told that she couldn't use it for the Halloween because it was theirs to use, and she was gonna do maybe a haunted house or something, and I don't know. And then Bob just said it in passing, no, that's not ours, and I said, you guys, I record that as a capital asset on our books, and we insure it. So it's either true or not, I wanna look into it, and then maybe Joanna
and
can help.
maybe that's something because the old home day committee maintains it and pays for things on that. And I'm not sure if they insure it too, because they talked when,
We definitely do, I know that.
so
they
I
might
don't,
as well.
what I'm saying is I'm wondering if it's being doubly insured.
These are the things about communication I'm saying that maybe we could try to clear up, maybe
That would
have
be
like a,
interesting.
It wouldn't be
Right.
uncommon for a landlord and a tenant though to insure the same structure. It's
Right.
not necessarily.
so I just,
I-
from a
listen,
financial answer,
This is where I'm thinking, I do not want us to make it look like we're going against the old home day committee.
I don't see that as an issue.
They've done a lot of work, they've done it for years, and I just don't wanna get into that situation.
And I'm just saying that you should record an asset that's not legally yours in your financial
I
statement.
get that
That's all I'm
part,
saying.
I get that part.
And any agreement that you have for who uses it, or even if it's theirs and they have an agreement with us, I'm perfectly fine with it. I just think we should research it, figure it all out, and have a conversation about it.
Before it was called Old Home Days, wasn't it the Foster
Foster
Fair? So would that perhaps be where we go to look in the records, that the?
Right, those buildings in the back were
Foster
built by the
Fair.
fair.
Yes, because they were there when I
So
was a
Which is-
we
kid.
might be looking in the wrong place.
Right.
That's what I'm
It's
thinking.
entirely
Yeah.
possible. I have no
Might be
idea. I was
years
thinking
ago.
somebody might.
So
that's a
it
good
might
point.
be that the Foster Old Home Days they don't even own it then, if it's.
fair, right.
Right,
I really have no idea. I just wanna report the right thing
right,
because.
and insure.
You know
Because
what I'm
on
saying
another
is-
aside to the audit, we received money, $40,000 at the end of August for a grant.
Mhm.
And when I researched the grant, I was thinking it was an error and it was actually ours. And I had no idea about the grant. I had no idea that the expenses had taken place. It was for a housing rehab loan program. And at one point in time, we did have a contract with them to run these programs for us. And literally days before that, the auditor had asked me if I had known if we had any federal programs for CDBG, and I had said,
Home Repair?
that's no longer true. Remember, we created this foster home repair?
Okay.
And then we had NeighborWorks of Rhode Island, I believe, had a contract. Well, they had an ongoing project, and somehow things got dropped over there where they didn't actually request the money or finalize it. And then they had asked Jen to sign something for the cash request, and Denise to sign off on the award. And in all honesty, all these things had already taken place, so they weren't really thinking, I didn't know, and I had no idea. So we're gonna have a prior period audit adjustment, because the majority of that activity took place in 2017. I believe they dropped the ball, and they're trying to kind of make it look like it's that they seem to think that because the grant wasn't closed until May, that somehow the auditor would be okay with the fact that $38,000 worth of work took place in 17 and 300 of it took place in 19, but that's not how it works. So we will have a prior year audit adjustment regarding that. But it's more of a discussion on like trying to think of who would need to have any kind of a, hey, by the way, did you know about, trying to straighten out some of these.
Well, you should know anyway, if
Communication
it's
policy.
money.
Yeah, honestly, Jen was new, there's been so much
Yeah, no,
transition,
I
she
get
didn't
that,
know,
right.
and I understand, and honestly, we did have procedures in place, they kind of dropped them at their level as well. And the thing is, we're supposed to report certain things a certain way, and we didn't because of it, and that I kind of have a problem with a little bit, because it reflects on me, so I'm just trying to have better communication all around, so we can try to avoid these little things. I'm spending a lot of time, we're trying to get the lease finalized. I told Joanna that she's gonna be contacted soon, because she's gonna have to sign off on like the legality of the lease. But for the pieces of equipment that we all are trying to move forward with, it's a little bit more complicated because we're trying to buy 3 different pieces of equipment from 3 different vendors with one lease, but we're making that work. It's just a better rate. I also met with, and spoken with a few people now from the police building committee, and provided some information, because at one point, I believe I was called on the carpet from somebody in the audience, but he was saying that I'm not being proactive with the money and getting the leasing options and all this other stuff, and they have the information, and I still don't know what's going on with it, because now it looks like we might be heading in a different direction, I'm not sure. So with whether or not we're gonna move forward with a building,
This has come to my attention too, that somebody is talking to Situate Town Council about us going there. That's not even on the table, and I don't know why you would do that.
Who are you making an accusation of?
I'm asking, well, I said, I don't know why you would do that, I'm asking why you would do that.
Am
I
I-
was told it was you,
No, there was a letter from to Situate Town Council
from you?
from a state representative that represents Situate, Bobby Quattrochi.
Okay. So this is why I'm asking you, Gordon, I
Well,
wanna get it out there.
Number one, it's not on the agenda, so I don't think we can go into detail and
So
discuss
my
it,
point is,
unless you want an OMA.
Well,
I don't know.
no.
My point is, so I am providing them, even though we're not, I don't know where, I thought we were pretty close to moving on it, I'm not really sure where we are, but I have provided it, Denise, you know this, right? So to be, transparent, I basically told them it's like 6 to 7 cents per
Yeah, they said like $250 to $300.
Right, it's like 6 to 7 cents to rate, on the tax bill, on the tax rate, to raise $25,000. So if you're trying to make a payment, the payment, depending on which bond you would go through, which avenue you would take, whether it be a 20-year or 30-year, whether it be a 10-year, whether it be a bond or a privately funded or a publicly traded bond, it all determines, that will determine your principal payment and your interest payment. And I'm thinking that if we're trying to raise about $175,000 to $185,000, you know, what you would need. So if you tried to calculate it, what it would look like on a bill, if this is the way we end up going, or even if we did join with another agency and we had to fund them, if we had to raise a certain amount of money, you have to think in the back of your head, whichever way you go, 6 to 7 cents to raise about $25,000 with the current tax assessment values that we have now. But what I did want to point out is that I also done some research on our long-term debt at the school level. And I'm going to talk to Dr. Barnes and to the school committee president too. But we have a bond, we have some payments dropping off in the next year or two on the school side that I was thinking we would be making our first payment in about a year or two. That could actually help us. So the first year, next year, I'm thinking we might save anywhere between, the numbers were fluid because they're changing their amortization schedule, but anywhere between $50,000 to $70,000 would drop off in the year after, possibly another $100,000. So that's about $150,000. So if we make just an interest payment next year, that's almost enough to cover it. And if we were to make a principal and interest payment the year after, which is usually how that works, it would go a long way in funding any kind of new debt. That said, traditionally, when their debt schedules change, if you look at how the region presents its budget, they have debt and operation, and they're very concerned about that net. And I'm saying that I would be presenting it in the way that, listen, we bonded for your building, for your capital. The town now needs, and that's our percentage of capital, the town now needs that payment for our own capital. So if you're going up 4% on operations, you're gonna have to spend that at 4% of operations, not net if you're decreasing debt. Are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm telling you that that's a possible source. I know that the schools are both gonna go up, but they were gonna go up regardless of this. I'm just saying that because when we were at the the police building committee, you were there, right?
Yep.
We were talking about how we would publicly defend it and what we would say, and that's capital for bond, it's a similar thing you're looking at. And then I know that they're saying, well, eventually Providence Water's gonna drop off. I'm like, well, bond money for a building is similar to bond money for a building more than capital for Providence Water, is for our building. So, and I'm not saying it's all semantics, it's how you look at it, but we were talking about the selling points of raising money and how we would do it, and I think that's an appropriate selling point. You think about it and we can discuss it further. Let's see.
Right now, the number's around 3.7 million, what I'm hearing they're getting.
It's not,
Come down.
it's come down. It wasn't that, the last meeting.
I thought we were back at 2.5.
2.5, but
Is
not
what I was
3.7.
Right.
I was hearing 2.5
Not
is the last one.
3.7, right, so.
So I don't
But I
honestly
also
know.
noticed that Situate is having which I was kind of jealous of, they're having a special financial town meeting
October 15th,
October 15th, looking for funding for the police station.
$860,000.
Redo.
Situate is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, so even if we did go, no matter what we do, we're gonna have to raise some money, because they're not gonna let us in there for free or for rent, they're gonna want some capital.
Right.
So I'm thinking,
Well, I'm
focus
just
on the
saying,
6 or
they're
7
having-
cents.
They're having a special financial town meeting to get
That'll be
monies
fun to
for
see.
it. Well, they're getting monies for. the
It's an
station.
additional monies because they had appropriated 1.7 million, and it's not enough to finish it because the stuff that had to be ripped out and retrofitted is gonna cost an additional $860,000. If that fails, I don't know what they're gonna do.
Wait, because they've got 3 things that they're looking.
Well, there's 3 things. There's a point fire truck for $1 million going into Situate. There's a addition on the town hall.
A fire truck.
And so it totals a couple $1 million in bonding. They're individual questions. It's not one yes up or down. It's on individuality on each of them. And, I mean, you don't have to respond, but the discussion that's going on, the state rep in Situate has had many residents speak to him, and in his letter, which I've read, which you will be getting soon, in addition to now that he sent that in, I represent both towns, and I've been getting people talking to me in both towns. So after seeing his letter sent to the Situate Town Council, I formulated a letter this afternoon, which will be sent, finalized today or tomorrow, and be sent to this council with his, that he sent to Situate, and mine will be going to both towns, and it will be up to this council and that council to see what they need to do to go forward to represent their constituents that are asking questions. So it'll be in your hands, how you go with it.
Thank you. I just don't want it to
No,
go too far
no.
off the agenda.
My point is, I'm hearing all kinds of things, like, I thought we were pretty close, that we were in the selling stages, which is why I was looking at the debt, trying to find a way to
I would agree with you.
promote it, and now I'm not quite sure, so
No.
just keep in mind 67 cents.
As far as the police building committee is concerned, yes.
We're going forward.
We're going forward. We haven't seen anything else to go otherwise.
And my final thing is for transparency too, because I met with the Charter Review Committee a couple times, and the last meeting was to discuss the land trust, and they're gonna be bringing forward their comments to you shortly. So one of my biggest things that I brought up the last time was that I would be, regardless of, we have a difference of opinion on the conveyance fees with the land trust, and that I would be bringing forward the opinion regardless of which way they went with it, someplace so that you would have a better understanding. It's basically, Jen's gonna, I think, we're gonna talk about the DEM grant, the second phase soon, and the fact is, no matter what grant we do, we're gonna need a match. And we're looking for new, not necessarily new revenue sources, but to better appropriate and use the money that we do have. And I've done a pretty thorough analysis of the land trust, just as they have, because they of course are trying to defend the work they do, but they don't need to defend it with me. I think they do excellent work, and there's such a great, they have some great pieces of property and wonderful trails and everything. It's just that they have a couple $100,000 that they have a couple $1 million worth of property, and that in their whole presentation, that I think we have to keep in mind that we have $1.5 million worth of property that we don't tax for the, is it Audubon?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that the right
Mhm.
word? We have $2 million worth of land trust that we don't, we
But
have.
this is gonna be a charter review.
This is
process,
a
so
charter
it's not
review,
our
so
decision.
these are the things that I discussed with them, and that eventually I'm gonna get into further with you, but these are the arguments that I need, that I want you to start considering when you're looking at this recreation field that we're doing, and this, we're building, and we're applying for a new grant, where are we gonna get our match? Which is one of my considerations with the conveyance fees, with the land trust, and as much open space as the town of Gloucester does have, would it be prudent at this point in time to start splitting some of the conveyance fees with the land trust so that we can develop our own recreation sites and open space for the town? Instead of trying to create a new revenue source, which would be taxation, let's call that spade a spade, possibly put better use, not better, different use, but the land trust is about open space and recreation and fields and trails, and we're talking about our open space and recreation, that either that they contribute to helping us maintain that property, which is somewhat questionable in the charter as it is, or that we split it 50-50 so that they have enough money to maintain all their trails and fields and do everything that they're doing, and use the other percent to start building up more money in our fund so that we can make our 20% match, because I believe a DM grant would require 20% match. And we're gonna also have to maintain this field going forward, and that's gonna require some money. I don't think people realize that we spend about $4,000 to $5,000 to maintain the baseball field at the Woody Loudon.
Yep.
Even if we switched that money to that, the magnitude of that land is so much greater, and the cost of maintaining that is gonna be so much more significant, that I'm just trying to use money and resources that, rather than try to create new revenue through taxation. So that I did discuss with the land trust, so in case there's scuttlebutt about what I said or whatever, that's pretty much what I said, that I would ask you to consider going forward in more detail. And that's pretty much it.
That's quite a bit. Thank you.
Yes, that was a lot.
Thank you. Moving on. under old business, the awarding of town hall painting, I went back tonight and was looking, we had this to table until October 24th, so that was my error, I shouldn't have put it on the
I
agenda.
talked to him too about it today, and we're not really, I wasn't
Yeah.
ready to discuss the finances,
Yeah.
and he's not ready to discuss.
Right, and I noticed on my notes, because I pulled the paper out for tonight's meeting and noticed that it said table until October 24th.
So we don't even need a motion.
We don't even need a motion, we motioned it last time, and I just, sorry about that. Next is the planning board appointments. You have before you the packet from before. There was a motion made for Cheryl and I to interview. We could not get those times together. So I did speak to David Palisi. Thank you, I was trying to, I confuse the last name all the time. Palisi. I did speak to David. I do know some of the other people that are on there. And Ms. Grenier's resume is still in the packet, but as we know, she withdrew
For now.
at this point,
Right.
for now. So, that being said, I know that we have two openings. We have Joe Carey's, which expires December 21st, December 2021, and Jess expires December 2019. So, those are two different end dates. So when you make your motion, if you would include what end date you
Want to do them one at a time?
Yes,
Yes.
please. So how about Joe Carey's, since he was the first to resign, December 2021?
I'd
I'll
like to
make a
make
motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to appoint David Palisi.
Oh, I'll second it. Sorry, I'm just sitting here looking at my notes. So the next one will be our appointment that comes up in January. So we reappointed again.
So this
Okay.
one would go.
Okay.
So discussion.
I looked at what he had submitted, I've talked to a few people, and I thought he would be a good addition to the planning board.
Any further discussion?
Dave, do you have any potential violations on your property?
No, not that I know of. I think there's a slight DEM issue, but that's getting cleared up now. There's an engineer work.
that, Joanne?
There's an
Slight
engineer.
what issue?
It's like a
DEM?
DEM issue. The engineer's working on it now with, I believe his name was Mr. Hebert from DEM. That's just, it was just
And is,
the,
and is Rhett involved in that?
no, no. It's just a, it's a wetlands buffer, minor violation type thing.
Setback.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Congratulations, Mr. Paley.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to Jeff Sheldon's position, which is December 2019.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Warren Ducharme to the term ending December of 2019.
A second.
Discussion? Mr. Duchamp is not here,
He's not.
but his resume certainly speaks for itself.
Yes, I spoke to him at length. He's a former town planner for the town of Foster. He's a former member of the planning board. He is an architect and building official. He has a training certificate in engineering. Let's see, what else? He was on a citizens advisory committee in Foster in 1991. He's been in Foster forever, and his qualifications are amazing. I think we really need somebody on the board with his qualifications.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to new business, we have an email from, an email from Maggie, I forgot her last name now.
to read,
Maggie Stormont, who is the secretary for the Foster Old Home Days on behalf of Janet Brayton, who is the president. And it states that it is with pleasure that the Foster Old Home Days Committee is donating 5 picnic tables to the town. It is our hope that these picnic tables will help town residents and groups enjoy the townhouse grounds. To that end, the Foster Old Home Days Committee has also moved other picnic tables and equipment belonging to the Foster Old Home Days from under the supper shed overhanging, making it easier for groups to use the space for community events. We hope that this donation and our efforts can encourage the continued growth of a supportive and connected community. What is the pleasure of the council?
I don't know that we need
No.
to take any
Do you
action,
want-
do we,
do you
but
wanna
I'll
accept
let her,
them?
I'll make a
I think
motion
we
to
have to
accept the
accept them.
donation and send the Old Home Days Committee a letter of thanks.
Second.
Discussion?
I think it's very nice. And I'm glad that this come to
Mm-hmm.
a satisfactory conclusion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Additions and abatements, you have an addition in front of you from the treasurer, tax assessor.
I will make a motion to accept the tax assessor's recommendation for additions in the amount of $1,020.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to the juvenile board appointments, juvenile hearing board appointments. You have before you 2 letters of current members. One is a permanent, which is a 3-year term, which would expire in September of 2022. Stephen Croto. And so if we could take those.
You want them separately?
Yes,
Okay, I'll
please.
make a motion to reappoint Stephen Croto to his 3-year term on the Juvenile Hearing Board.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The second one is an alternate, and it is from Mary Jo Cretion, and it expires in September 2020. It's a 1-year term.
Yeah, in her letter, she said she's willing to continue unless someone else is, she says preferred or interested. Have we had anybody else that's interested?
didn't
I
say
think Mary Jo
interested,
is
she
great,
said-
she does a great
yes.
job, I just didn't want to overlook.
She doesn't
anybody.
say interested, she just says is preferred. I think she's
Right.
involved enough to know that it can change.
Yes, I just wanted to see if there was anybody else.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I think she does a great job.
I think so too. Actually, I pursued her to be on the committee.
I'll make a motion to reappoint Mary Jo Cretion to her 1-year term on the Juvenile Hearing Board as an
Second.
alternate.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Phase 2 of DEM Recreation Grant, you have a copy of it in your packet. And we have Jennifer here.
Yep.
Jennifer, you want
So,
to
yeah,
present?
Sure. So Rhode Island DEM put out their solicitation for grants for 2020, and it's funded by the state green bond that we all voted as a state on. The grant application is due December 11th, and you can ask for up to $400,000 with a 20% match. So that means you would get $400,000 and you would have to commit to doing $100,000, which could be in-kind match. This would be for the soccer field, a new soccer field for phase 2, a basketball court, and a walking trail. After speaking to Bob, he said it may or may not be able to pay for a tennis court because they tend to be expensive. So the conditions for doing the grant are to hold a public meeting, which we're doing here at the town council, to get you to authorize submission of the grant with a, with saying that the town is going to match the 20%. So, I spoke to Bob and I spoke to DEM, and they said that you can't take into consideration anything you've done before for the match. So he was saying that we had graded the whole area and that he was thinking that that could be part of the match, but they told me no.
Oh, that was our labor from our
Yes,
DPW.
'cause you can count
so
the
we can't
labor.
use that this
Yes.
time, okay.
Because we used it for.
Right.
We're using it
Yeah,
for this,
we're
yes,
double dipping.
that's our match for this one.
Yes, so he did say that he's gonna be asking for sprinkler money and a well, which is gonna be around $12,000, and we could use that as part of, but still, that's not $100,000, you know? So that's something to think about. But I feel like you have the plan already, you have phase 2, you've gotten money from DEM. I don't think it will take me that long to do the application, but we have had, it's been a long process getting the RFPs and everything for phase 1, and it would entail doing other things. So, you know, we're here to talk about, do you wanna go forward with that, with this?
Can I have a motion before we have?
I make the motion, we go forward with it.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. I'm really hesitant, considering what's going on there now. I mean, November 1st is approaching rapidly, and we're nowhere close to,
What do they need to do now?
they haven't
Loam
seeded
and
yet,
fencing,
they.
right?
I think it's
Yes.
loom seed and ribbons.
Right, and I know the next 3 days, although I thought I heard them working.
They
The
were
track,
there
they haven't done the
yesterday.
trail either, they haven't done the,
Yeah.
what do you call that,
The walking track.
The walking track, they are supposed to do that as well.
I thought the walking trail is for the
That's-
second phase.
No, there's a
No,
walking,
there's
it's
a-
gonna be a
there's-
big,
oh.
there's a phase 1
There's a
walking
phase
and then
1 and a phase 2.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be in
That's
your
all right.
face. But yeah, that's right now, I feel like I'm
I
really
said it at the
hesitant.
last meeting, I
Yeah.
said to him, now go get it done.
Right,
Well,
I
they've
mean,
been working, I
I know
have
they've
seen
been
them, I've been
working.
a couple of times to look. I think they're removing the fill that they were talking about.
They were
before.
screening loom,
They
So-
were doing something.
right?
Gordon?
Would you like me to add?
Yes, please.
It's all on grade. The hardest part of that job was cutting it. It's already been cut to grade. What you see there is pre-ball field subgrade. All the drainage is completely in. That's completely done. Everything's tied in. The retention pond is completely done. The reground is sitting there ready to just put down in the parking lot. Everything's staked out. The ball field is staked out. All the loom was screened this week before the rain came. It would take 2 or 3 days just to spread the loom and get it ready for seed. The fence guy, I believe, is already called. He's prepped, ready to come out. And then the fence will go around the ball field. And the walking track is just stone dust. It's just pushing with a tractor. It's not, that's already pre-prepped. Everything's pre-prepped
so
on
I
phase
shouldn't
1.
be losing sleep over this.
No, it's gonna be close from this weather did set him back. But he got all the loom screened this week,
Oh, good.
and it doesn't take nothing to
Is
spread.
it gonna be
an acre of loom.
hydro seeded, because then they just.
Yeah, no, they'll just hydro
It's
seed
a
it.
lot faster.
But he
Yeah.
said last,
He
2
just
weeks
didn't know
ago,
if it
he
was
said
broke.
he would seed it, and if we needed to do it again because it got washed away,
Yeah,
he would come back and do it again.
The
So
issue
why
is-
do it for this?
And once it's seeded, again, he'll come and seed it, but because you have no sprinkler systems there, this is prime time to seed it. It shouldn't be a
Right.
problem.
Right.
But you're gonna have an ongoing problem keeping it green in the summer. And
Hence Bob asking for a well.
Right.
And I want to add on phase 2. Phase 2 is a large cut, but also there's much more interest with a football field
And a soccer field.
and a soccer field, well, a football field, which can be used as a dual soccer, but
And
you
I
got,
understand that, Gordon, but you can also understand my being hesitant, considering I thought we would be further along than we are now.
Well, here's the thing, I'm looking at it this way. If we don't meet the guidelines of this grant, whether
We're
you
not
apply for it
gonna-
or
Right,
not,
we're not gonna
you'll
get
get
it.
rejected.
That's what I was saying, that's what I was
Can I-
thinking.
Jennifer, can I ask you, now, they're saying hydro seeding, and I understand that. Are they gonna look for grass to be growing by
No.
November 1st? Because I don't care if you hydro seed or you don't
No,
hydro
I
seed.
don't think so, I think it just has to
I
be
don't think
seeded.
so.
I'm like, do we have to cut the lawn? And
No.
then, you know,
Takes a few hours to hydro seed it, then it's done, it's in,
Okay.
it's in God's hands at that point.
that would be my, like I said,
I think the town wants to do it, it's just that, do we do it now?
yes.
And,
Can't leave it like it is.
No.
Right, well, we gotta do it now while the money's there.
Right, right.
Because what happens is, once they use all this grant money, then
That's
it's
right.
gonna go back on a ballot.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And then it's gonna, any grants that will be contingent on whether or not the state of Rhode Island votes for a new
That's
fund.
Right.
I think we go for it.
Any
Yeah.
further discussion? Thank you for that information,
keep in
Gordon, I
mind.
feel somewhat better, but.
If you go for it, you're $100,000 that you need to come up with, so be thinking along the lines of what I was saying, or other ways to get that, or we're gonna have to get it from capital. We do have some money in the payment in lieu fund, which is also used to subsidize, that's where we bought the land from. And that's where we paid $166,000 for our portion of what we did originally. Unfortunately, we can't use any of that towards the second one, but, we do have some money, so maybe half of it could come from that. And possible, like, ongoing funds from conveyance or something else, depending on what else happens. But
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Jennifer. Have a nice evening, get home in time to watch the Patriots. Okay, moving on.
And I better, someone's gonna head to roll.
And motion to go into, further, future agenda items, I have the solar ordinance on front, I have the town hall painting. Anything else? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to go into executive session.
Thank you. I move to go into executive closed session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws